Well, welcome everyone to the Scale Up Insights Live. As many of you are receiving on Thursdays, I put out these weekly insights where I'm kind of updating the things that I'm thinking about and reading about. And I wanted to have a chance to have a live webinar we almost have 1,000 on this, where I can share kind of what are the latest things that I've been thinking about. And it seems like about every 6 months, I'm updating material that I'm presenting out there in keynotes and workshops. And what I want to do, by the way, right up front, is take some Q&A. I want to see what's on your mind. And so if you can go there to the upper left-hand corner, there's a raise your hand button. And if you push on that, you'll have a chance then to ask a question of me live. So begin to think about that. But I want to start with a question. I've gotten excited. In fact, this upcoming summit that we've got in St. Louis, our Scale Up Summit, we're going to be featuring what I consider the very best strategy question which was ever asked. And that was by Clayton Christensen at Harvard. And that question is, what is the real job that your company, your product, your service is doing for the customer? And in fact, we're going to open up that summit and we're going to take people to that famous Clayton Christensen YouTube video. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, go get it immediately and show it to your team, where he explores what is the real job of a milkshake. What does this milkshake do, particularly for morning commuters? And it was only when the company that had this question explored it did they really understand how they could then improve that product and have agile products that might be able to do a similar job. And so I want to take a generic question. So what is the general job of every one of our companies? And this is what I've been thinking about. And I know a lot of folks will immediately say, well, it's to drive profit, to drive a purpose, to satisfy a customer's need. You know, you'll get a lot of those kind of generic answers. And I agree with those. But I found, and I don't know if it's right, but I find it's really practical and useful. And that's what we like to do, is really provide stuff that's practical and useful. To me, the number one job of all of our companies, in fact, all of our organizations, whether we're for-profit or not-profit, is around the word easy. If you think about that Staples easy button, what do we need to do to ultimately make somebody's job or somebody's life easier, not harder? And so what I want you to contemplate is go back with your team and say, what exactly isn't easy? And if you look at one of the fastest growing market cap companies out there, it's Amazon. And one of the things that Jeff Bezos has done brilliantly is literally focus and obsess around this idea of how do we make it even easier for you to order and get stuff. You know, it started out with their trademark one click. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to shop any other place because it's got all my information. I don't have to pay for shipping. They've made that easy because I've got Prime. I can just pull it up on my phone or desktop, and I can just push that button and it's on the way. If I want to get a book, I don't even write it down. I pull up my Kindle app and look it up immediately, and that book is not only ordered, it's been downloaded. I'm ready to read it within seconds. And so every week, knowing Jeff Wilkie well, I know that they focus and obsess on what do we have to do this week to make it even easier, folks, to get our stuff. By the way, even if you don't like it, they made it easy for you to return it. And so go back with your team and explore this idea of what's not easy. Is it easy for people to navigate our website? Is it easy for people to get a hold of us? Is it easy for people to understand what it is we do? And ultimately, what your product or service has to do is make somebody's life and the job that they're doing easier. Now, that's on the product and service side. There's also this topic of leadership, and there must be 1,000 books, new books every year written about this topic of leadership. For me, it can all be boiled down very simply, that the job of a leader then in an organization is to figure out how do we make the employees of our company's lives easier. And believe me, if you look at the surveys about disengagement and all that, a lot of employees would swear that your job is to make my life miserable. And so if you can really, as a leadership team, obsess around two things every week. What do we have to do to make what we do easier for the customer? And how do we make it easier for people to do their job inside the company. And that really ties into a couple of the Rockefeller habits, the importance of gathering information from your customers on a daily and weekly basis so you can stay on top of this, and doing the same with your employees. And so get obsessed around this very, very simple word, easy. Now, with that, Megan, do we have any questions that have come in? I want to kind of see what's on people's minds. I've got some other things that are hot buttons for me that I want to touch on. Any questions?
We do. We have a question from Shakir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
I can.
Hey, Verne, how's it going?
Who is this? Sounds like, well, welcome.
Awesome. So I'm actually here in Dubai. I sent you an email a few days ago and you responded. So thanks a lot for that. My question
You're welcome.
is,
I try to be responsive.
thank you. My question is, as a CEO, if you don't have, like, I'll tell you where I'm at. I have 30 employees. We're doing about $8 million a year in revenue. But it seems like I'm managing all those 30 employees myself, which is very draining. So I've been basically told by some of my mentors to go and hire divisional managers. So if where would I start? How would I go about hiring that process?
Yeah, you know what? First of all, it's tough. You're at 30 employees. It's kind of what they called at MIT Burns Valleys. So you're somewhere between 10, which is very efficient. You're likely able to easily lead or manage 10 folks. Then what you've really got to do is get up to about 50, 7 times 7, where you got 6 or 7 people that they can lead. So it's very much like the size of a typical forum. And so what's critical is this is the time where you probably need, do you have a great number 2?
No.
Kind of like Tim Cook to Steve Jobs?
No, I don't have anyone like that.
Yeah, that's what I recommend. For most entrepreneurs at the point where you are, you've got to find your Tim Cook. You've got to find this right number 2 where you can kind of dream up stuff and you can toss it over the transom. And they're the ones that are going to be able to kind of help drive it. Steve Jobs can come up with the iPhone, but it was Tim Cook to make sure that we had 10 million of them available on a Monday when people are standing in line to get it. Now, where do you find this right number 2? And this, to me, is what my research has found. This is the one position you can't head on. This has to be somebody that you've known for quite a while and that you've had some real interactions with, so that you guys know that, first of all, you can fight without killing each other, that you're going to be aligned in terms of values. And so where do you find it typically? And those who have a great number 2, it was they grew up inside the organization. They were an employee that's grown into that role. There may be somebody that worked with you and left, and then you're able to attract them back into the organization after they've gained much greater experience out with whatever they were doing. Maybe it's a customer you've got that would love to now jump over to your side of the business. It could even be a supplier out there. It could be a family member, but it's somebody that you in your previous or present life have worked with for quite a while. Now, a couple of folks came up to me and said, but what about the Google boys? They brought in Eric Schmidt. And so I thought, I've been had. But I went back and looked, and they were smart enough to put Eric on their board for a year. Before they moved him into that kind of number 2 role. He had CEO title, but clearly the two founders owned the company. And so they had a chance to test drive their relationship with Eric and see if they could get along without killing each other in the process. So I'd really recommend that you focus on. Did anyone come to mind when I mentioned that list?
Yeah, I have. It's funny you said that because one of my employees left. And then he started his own business and he made a lot of money, but he's now asking me for a job back because he realized that he doesn't like building a team, he doesn't like being a CEO or any of those things. So straight away, he's in my mind.
All right, there you go. That's what I would look for in your situation.
Okay, follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Basically, so how would I structure a compensation plan? Do I give them equity? Do I give them how does...
Yeah, we're going to be talking about price and how most of us get that wrong. And I don't know why. I've got some ideas, but the equivalent of price inside a company is compensation. And most of us need to realize that in most of our companies, that's the single largest expense. Yeah, we kind of set comp, looking our finger to the wind like we do price. And it's something that really needs to be thought through. In fact, my partner and I, Sebastian Ross, are doing a mini book right now. I'm in the process of editing it that's specifically on how do we scale up our compensation systems. Now, I'll give you kind of some quick rules. First of all, you can't copy anyone else's compensation system. You want to look to your core values. And your core values should speak to you about how you would structure that. So for instance, if you're a company that is all about fierce independence and you eat what you kill, then you want a compensation plan that is highly variable based on performance. If you've got a company that's really about working together closely as a team, we're there to collaborate, we're there to support each other, you're probably going to want more of a fixed type of compensation. And one of the things I think you can at the top end of the organization is the thing you need to be careful, make sure of, whatever the compensation is, that they come to you ahead of time with a plan that says, looking at your company, going the interview, spending some time with you, here are the 3 or 4 things I know I can accomplish that will pay my compensation back 2 or 3-fold in the first year. That way you can begin to afford to bring on the much better talent you need as you begin to scale up the organization.
Okay.
Thanks, Verne.
All right.
For joining us.
Good luck out there.
Thank you.
Bet.
We have another question from Mark. Coming in now.
Hey, Mark.
Thank you. My company is 35 to 40 employees as well, and we've grown with a lot of the support that you provided. My struggle here is in KPIs. I realize that in order to grow, I've got to delegate by creating KPIs for different departments, but I've got things like marketing, whose primary job is branding, and I've got my e-commerce department, which provides me with so many numbers that they're just incomprehensible. So these coming up with KPIs is really my biggest struggle here.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of resources. So first of all, how Wikipedia has provided this kind of unbelievable up-to-date source of information for all of us. There's actually a Wikipedia for KPIs. It's called kpilibrary.com. What you can do, what's that? Have you looked at it?
Yeah, it's helpful, but.
Well, and you can sort by, there's like 40,000 KPIs up there, and you can sort by industry and by function. And I'll come back to your specific question, but I just want to give the general audience a couple of resources. The second is there's actually a book called Key Performance Indicators, and it's good. And it's 75 metrics that really any leader of a company ought to be considering to take a look at. But I feel your pain because a good friend of mine and partner, John Ratliff, when he was running his call center business, there were all these metrics that he describes that his industry took a look at, would even give awards for. But when he stepped back, he realized that they had no correlation to the kind of outcomes you're looking for, which is, revenue growth and profitability growth and, customer satisfaction. And he was able to really step back one night and say, all right, what do I think is the Moneyball, that book Moneyball? Where in baseball, they figured out that it was just your on-base percentage, which was the key, most important KPI. They really predicted player success. What is that Moneyball metric that really drives the business? And then once you're clear about that, then you can begin to backfill what are the sub-metrics that serve that. Hopefully, so let me give you an example. If you look at Southwest Airlines, one of the things that Jim Collins talked about, and it's part of our 7 strata, is what is your profit per X? And the X was really unique to your business model. So everybody in the airline industry looked at profit per seat, profit per mile. What they chose to look at was what is our profit per plane? And that was the entity around which they wanted to build the entire organization. In fact, when they set their BHAG, they said, we don't want to have this much revenue, or we want to have this many customers. No, we want to have X number of planes in the air. Back when I was working inside there at 2000, by 2010, we want to have like 346 planes in the air. Once they knew that, and they used the same aircraft, and their goal was to maximize the revenue, the profit, everything per plane, they could then predict exactly how many pilots they needed, what parts they needed, how many, and they wanted to have 8 flights per day on each one of those planes, so they knew how many routes they needed to fly. They know how many seats are on that plane, so then they knew how many passengers they're going to be able to move. So you need to figure out what is the overall driver of your business, and then derive all the other KPIs, including for marketing, out of that.
I get it.
All right.
That's great. That's a good good direction.
All right. Good luck on that. And go back and read Jim Collins' Profit Per X piece that he did in his book.
Will do. Thank you.
You bet. One more question, if we've got it up there, Megan.
Verne, we've got one from Kurt. Any practical advice on honing our company and product value props? We have a lot of information, thoughts gained over the years. We solve in customer needs focused instead of leading with the features and benefits. He's struggling because we should know this, but he gets stuck and frustrated. Any book recommendations? Should we use a facilitator? General thoughts.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it is hard to see when you're inside the organization. So we absolutely recommend bringing outsiders in to facilitate that. At every one of our annual strategy sessions that we do in January, we bring an outsider. We've had Rick Cash, vice chairman of Nielsen, Tom Stewart, who ran HBR and now heads up the National Center for the Mid-Market. And we're lucky. We're going to have the very top strategist from Bain, who's just recently retired, coming in, Chris Zook, and he's going to come into our next strategy session and kind of push it. So first, I absolutely think it's important, whether if you're an EO or YPO, you've got a forum mate that's willing to come in and kind of push on this and give you an outside perspective. And one of the other things that we did is we ran for many years our quarterly planning sessions. We hosted them at a customer site. And so it gave us a chance to spend some time with that customer, have lunch, tour their facility, keep our heads engaged, and that every decision we're going to be making over the next 2 days that somehow or another needs to be able to be aligned with what matters to the customer. And so that's why it's critical, again, that Rockefeller habit, for you to get on the phone and figure out, in talking to them, we have 4 questions that we recommend in the book you ask every customer, so you can determine what is the real value proposition. So I'll give you an example out of the book if you missed it. So Roger Hardy is building Coastal Contacts. They're selling contact lenses over the phone and the internet, and they called me in to do a strategy session for a couple of days. And his 11 top execs from around the world had 100 years plus combined experience in this industry. And I could tell over the 2 days, as they were discussing, should we raise price or lower price, and should we get into glasses and sunglasses, and whether or not we should maybe even get into eye care itself, the service side of this business. I could tell they didn't have a clue because they'd been kind of isolated up in their offices. And so my recommendation over the next 3 months was just to get out and go talk to customers. Now, I'm going to make a very, very long story short. And always, the results in hindsight seem so obvious and simple. But every time they call about 20 customers themselves every week, they begin to see a pattern. That the customers that were happiest with them were those that accidentally, whether they ordered it or not, accidentally got their contact lenses overnight. Now, obviously, you'd be happier if that were the case. And why were some of them getting them overnight? Because they lived closest to what were some of the distribution centers that they had around the globe. And so they had an idea. What if we overnight everything and just make it part of our service? And before, they had learned that they could actually raise their price, not lower their price, which was avoiding a major train wreck in addition. And so they tested it. As Jim Collins say, you want to shoot bullets, not cannonballs. So they went to one region in the world, and they tested this overnight, and revenue increased not 6%, not 16%, but jumped 60%. And it really was a key thing that they were able to offer and promise that made all the difference. Same thing happened with Rackspace when Graham and his team were early on in that Birthing of Giants program at MIT that I founded and hosted there. They were just another hosting service. And so we said, Graham, look, go out there and just go talk to customers and find out what real job we need to do for them. And that's when he struck upon this fact that, what you really need to do is make sure that the hosting is up. And so that's obviously an important KPI back to that previous question and value proposition. But it's when it goes down that matters the most, because you've got some IT person here who's VP of this, that, and the other things pounding on because the website's down or something else down. And what they need to do is get a hold of somebody. And you got to think about it that simply. And in the process, in the old days, what you did is you called up and you got these automated attendants that maybe push 1 for this, push 2 for that, push 3, I've got a major emergency. Now enter your 12-digit gold, platinum customer. I don't even know what that number is. I just need to get a hold of a human being. And so I remember Graham coming back way when they were young and small and saying, look, we're going to make a bold move. We're going to rip out all those automated attendants, and we're going to make sure that the phone's answered in not 2 rings, not for 4 rings, but 3 rings. And it's going to be answered by a level 2 text. We make sure the call isn't transferred. I had to deal with the phone company. I'll let them be unnamed yesterday. But the number of prompts I had to go through and the number of people I got transferred for a very simple issue was absolutely frustrating. And then Graham did one simple thing. He made this measurement visible. They put these red lights, spinning lights inside their call centers. And if any call started to move to a 4th ring, these red lights went off. Now, the book that I recommend, sorry for kind of a long answer to that question, the book I recommend is Francis Fry's book, The Great Harvard Strategist, Uncommon Service. And this idea that, if we're not careful, customers will want you right to bankruptcy. And part of the challenge, if you take literal of what I said earlier, which is go talk to customers, yeah, talk to them. But the mistake is you can't do everything that they ask. If you do, and your competitors are talking to the same customers, now you're all going to be doing 10 things that the customer wants, none of them really well. And so you're going to be commoditized. You're going to look like everyone else. In Francis Fry's work, the idea is to say, look, if this is a list of 10 things that the customer really would love us to do, let's pick 2 or 3, what we're going to call on our 7 strata, the brand promises, the 3 promises we're going to make, and particularly be clear about the one we're going to lead with. And then what you've got to do on a scale of 1 to 5, you literally got to be a 10 in those 3. And then you got to be willing to be absolutely the worst in the other 7, almost to the point where you're upsetting. Is Francis Fry willing to piss some customers off? And so if you look at Southwest Airlines again, with low fare, and they absolutely led with that. They wanted the fare to be less than bus fare. They then filled it in with lots of flights and lots of fun. But man, if you wanted an advanced reservation seat, or you wanted food, or all the other things that airlines offer, forget it. You're not going to get it with the Southwest Airlines experience. So read Francis Fry's book, go talk to customers, look at your core competencies, be clear then on what are the 2 or 3 things you can be absolutely the best at, and then shed all the nice to haves, which will both reduce the complexity and your cost structure, and should make it easier for everybody both to understand what it is that you offer and for you to be able to deliver that service in the first place. All right. Let me take the time. Let me just touch on a second topic that's really top of mind right now. Had to do with my mentor, Herman Simon, who's kind of the guru of pricing, and his book that I named one of the best business books about a year ago. And I mentioned in Scaling Up that the number 1 functional weakness to scaling a business is marketing. In fact, the original research that Ed Roberts, the senior fellow that was my big supporter at that MIT program, his original research around high-performing tech companies found that tech teams that had at least 1 person that had marketing background and focus was able to scale much further faster than if it was a team of 4 of just techies. And so this marketing function is critical. Now, the guy who taught it to me was Regis McKenna. Regis was the one who taught Steve Jobs marketing, Intel, Genentech, and back in 1985, I cold called him when I was getting ready to build Ace and YEO and said, look, you're good enough for Steve, you're good enough for me. And I talked him into being his only free client he tells me ever had in history. And he said, all right, I'm going to put you through exactly the same book. And he sent me out this manual about this thick. He signed me a guy named Rich, who then began to guide me through this process. And the first habit was this. Do you have a marketing meeting? Every week. It sounds so simple, but I'm amazed at how many scale-ups don't have a separate meeting from sales that's focused exclusively on marketing. As Megan knows, who's our CMO, we've got that marketing meeting every week at 10 a.m. on Monday, where we are able to then talk through a set of items. Now, what should that agenda be? And I want to suggest 2 things. First, you've got the standard 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. And that's why I consider marketing strategy equal to strategy. I mean, what's more important than to decide what is your product, particularly what are the 2 or 3 things it does to make someone's job a lot easier? What's the price, promotion, and where are we going to distribute the place? Now, Ogilvy, the big agency, has updated the 4 P's to what we call of marketing. And so I'd encourage you to get online and Google Ogilvy's 4 E's of marketing. And they've got a white paper and a PowerPoint that you can download for free and begin to go through those. For instance, what's replaced marketing is the full experience. And that goes back to, is every step of the experience in doing business with your company easy, including paying your bill. I remember Dwight Cooper at PPR was, sucking on the cash side of the business, growing rapidly because he's providing nurse staffing to hospitals who take forever to pay. And so we brought in a woman, Ann Mims, to go build a relationship with the top 150 payables clerks and figure out how can we make their job easier to pay our bill. And they did. They made sure that their invoice got moved to the top of the pile. Took another 15 days out of their cash conversion cycle, which at the time added another $2 million in cash flow. So you want to be looking at not just the product or service, but the entire experience, everyone that you touch, including the payables clerk, with your business. But the one that I want to highlight is price. It's the 1 P that will take money right to the bottom line. The other 3 P's, you got to spend money to make money. And I don't know if we just got a competence problem or whatever, but I just want to start out by saying I think most of us just absolutely give our product away. And you feel like you have to do it to get into the business. So I want to tell you a couple of stories. I just heard yesterday from Larry Gilbert. He's been a client for many, 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 many years, has a company called Event Networks. Today, they're somewhere up around $250 million. They were much, much smaller back when they first were at the MIT program and engaged with us. And what their company does is they manage the retail operations at tourist attractions. So at museums and aquariums, where they're really good at that, but they're not particularly good at the store piece. And so he took this idea and he said, all right, store managers, what I'd like you to do is take our top 10 best-selling items, and I would like you to, wherever it is, and whatever those items are in your store, and I want you to raise the price 10% every week until you see demand fall off. And Larry reported out at our CEO gathering of kind of our top exclusive. He was an F-Pro member, and we gathered them together privately at our summits and VIP suites and stuff. And so we got a group of them together, and Larry shared with us how they got all the way to 80% in price increases until they saw demand fall off. Now, they didn't go raise prices 80%, but he realized that they were leaving absolute millions of dollars on the table because they were idiots when it came to pricing. John Ratliff, again, who I mentioned earlier, John this year hosted the Gathering of Titans. That's the alumni group that came out of the Birthing of Giants. And so I had a chance to go this year. And we were talking about pricing, and one of the guys in the audience has built this enterprise-wide solution for a large company that saves them massive amounts of money. And he's selling it for $30,000, and he can't sell one of them. So he decides to go out and go talk to customers and figure out, this thing does such amazing and solves such a big problem for you and makes things so much easier. Why aren't you buying it? And they said, look, because it's so low priced. We don't believe that something that's only $30,000 won't get us in trouble. And in fact, when we've got $300,000 budgeted for this kind of solution, so you know the rest of that story. He just went out and 10x the price, and he's selling them like hotcakes. Now, it's not always about high price and low price. If we go back to Amazon, the amazing thing is that how often do they change price? And it's by the hour. My book itself over the last 6 weeks has changed from something around $15 and change to $21 and change. Yet some poor retailer or even B2B, has a fixed price that they stick, and the only time that they're going to change it is when they got to try to get it out the door. And so this idea that there isn't one price, that this price needs to vary based on demand. In fact, one of the most egalitarian companies in the world, Disney, has decided, because it's not a great experience for a lot of people if you're there during the busy time, they're moving to demand pricing on their tickets so they can smooth out the flow of their theme parks, and again, make it a much, much better experience for the customers. Now, one last thing around price. If you look at the B2B space, this is why we're huge fans of Victoria Medbeck, the negotiations professor at Northwestern University and advisor to Goldman Sachs. One of her absolutes is that if you're up against and having to bid on a contract or an RFP, or you've had a customer for years, but they just want to kind of put it out to bid to keep you honest, it's critical that you always submit 3 bids. And you vary the price based on your strength so that you shine a huge spotlight on it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got this longstanding customer. We had one. There was a new board member that came into the customer that was from Stanford, and she really wanted us to bid against Stanford for the next round of business. So a real situation inside Gazelles. And let's say that it wasn't Stanford's case, but that who you're competing against are some lowballers that are going to come in and just lowball the price so they can grab the customer from you over the next 5 years. And then once they're inside, they're going to start jacking the price up as they need to provide better service. And that particularly this customer needs response time. And so what you do, and the competitor for their lowball price is not going to be able to do that. And so what you do is you put in one bid that matches what you think is going to be the lowball price, but you emphasize that there is no way that you're going to be able, that if your employees have questions, there's going to be FAQs. Maybe we'll get back to you in a week. Maybe we can get a design turned around a week. Maybe we can get that inventory out to you a week, but it's going to take a week. Now, for this price, we can get it to you next day. But our experience with you, so that you can serve your customers well, is that 72% of the time, your people need a 2-hour response. That's why our price is here. And so by varying a price across what is your main value proposition, you shine this huge light on it, and you get them to go back and question the other bidders who are lowballing to say, hey, you didn't mention anything about inventory or design or question response time. We want to dig into that. And one of 2 things are going to happen. They're either going to expose that competitor is not going to be able to deliver on it, or you're going to find out that what is your main value proposition doesn't matter to that customer. Maybe you ought to move on and find customers who do value what it is that you do. So what I'd like you to do is dig into Herman Simon's book on pricing. You can find that on Amazon. And I want you to go right to the London Olympic case study, where London Olympics generated more revenue than the 3 previous Olympics combined by being clever in terms of pricing. Now, I've got a guest that's joining me on this, Kent, who works very close with Salim Ismail, who wrote the book Exponential Organizations. And I had to admit, after writing Scaling Up, I thought I'd covered it all. And then Salim came out, who was the founding executive director of Singularity University with Peter Diamandis. Salim came out with this book called Exponential Organizations. And when I read it and then went to hear him speak and went to Peter's things, I realized I had missed an entire body of knowledge. It was critical if you really want to scale up exponentially. In fact, I was really excited that when my book Scaling Up came out, they then matched me up with Salim's book. And I thought that was fortuitous because I really think you need both exponential organizations and scaling up to complete the ideas that are necessary for you to scale. And so, Ken, I want to kind of turn it over to you. I know you've been working hard with Salim to apply those ideas to mid-market companies, us mere mortals out there in the marketplace. And so, Kent, come on and share. I know I've got a couple of stories you want to share.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Verne. Thanks for letting me be here with you today. Just to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed this webinar as a consumer on this end, waiting for my turn. Thanks for that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about something that we call the EXO methodology. It comes from the book that Verne mentioned, and there are really 11 attributes. I've got a picture of that for you here that folks will bring up. So we're not going to have time to go into every one of these today, but I want to tell you, I think I'm going to do 3 stories, and I'll try to stick to 1 attribute per story, but I get kind of excited as I go along because the transformations that we see in companies that implement at least 4 of these to become exponential organizations are just outstanding. And even more importantly, the changes in the people as they go through this journey within their organizations are outstanding. So with that, let me go ahead and talk about each of these. You can, you guys take a look at the picture just for a second. You'll see 10 attributes on the right. Those are scale. We think of these as the external attributes that help you harness abundance. Peter Diamandis, Kotler style from the book Abundance. And then on the left-hand side, these we consider the internal attributes, ideas that help you take that abundance, put it to work, and then if you're lucky, output yet more abundance for you, your shareholders, your customers, and those jobs that you have to do that Verne was talking about. So you can drop the picture. I'll go into these 3 cases. The first one I want to talk about is a personal client of mine. It's an organization called Premex. Premex is a very traditional organization in agriculture. They make feed formulations for chickens, for pigs, and for cows. And you might think to yourself, well, how in the world are you going to turn that into an exponential organization? Well, we took a really interesting approach and we said, well, we're faced with shrinking margins, we're faced with a very rapidly aging employee demographic, and we're faced with increasing business commoditization across the industry. So we asked a fundamental business question. What are we going to do to turn this organization into a data-driven organization and put out a digital platform that would make our clients be able to farm better, basically? It's really straightforward. And we decided in order to do this that we would focus extremely heavily on the 1 EXO attribute called algorithms. What did this mean functionally for the team is it was time to do some data science. Data science is just about turning data into knowledge, more or less, right? That's a very simplified example. So how would we do that? We dove into algorithms and we began to implement something that we call data activation. And that's just all about the acquisition of data, the analysis of it. And it allowed us to do something very special in the beginning months of this process, and that's to focus on education. We brought in speakers, we ran workshops, we downloaded all the tools we could find on the internet to play with data science. We took Udacity courses. But the goal of this was it was all knowledge acquisition. It was kind of throwaway. It was just all about learning. But then what we did was we said, okay, well, we've learned a lot. We see what data we have. Let's do some experiments. That's also an EXO attribute on the internal side. So we began to do a couple of things, and you can almost nest these attributes. We began to bring in outside data scientists, outside data analysts, outside data engineers. This is staff on demand or staff augmentation. And we really were able to put down a baseline technology deployment that allowed us to start actually getting some answers about things like, well, Well, what does it do to the weight of a chicken over time when the temperature of a broiler exceeds a certain amount and when we turn the lights off and on? So we built models that became predictive over time to do this. End to end, so we played around with that for another couple months. That's about 2 months of learning, 2 months of experimentation. Then we got serious and we said, we're going to build our product. And we created something called asymmetrics, right? IoT for commercial poultry farming, really. And it is an online digital platform. You can go check out the website yourself, asymmetrics.co. And we harnessed the power of machine learning, artificial intelligence for their massive transformative purpose of nourishing wellness, which I happen to just love. I mean, imagine going to work every day to nourish wellness. This is a good day. You know, my personal MTP is to apply technology for humanity. People can have MTPs too. So I'm sort of married to the nourish wellness thing by default. I love it. And so those efforts, here's the shocking part. How long would that normally take in a 50-year-old feed producer? You know, you would expect a decade. We did all of that in just about 9 or 10 months. Okay, so there's the speed aspect there. The second case I want to share with you is an organization I've been helping Salim build, and it's called the Fast Track Institute. There, we're attempting to accelerate technology into society. And I heard the example question from one of the attendees on the call here about how to sort of get past this. I feel like I'm managing everybody. And it just reminded me of the story. So I wanted to share it in addition to what Verne shared. And one of the attributes that you'll see in the EXO methodology is autonomy. Hey guys, float that picture back up again, maybe at the beginning of each case, just to remind everybody. So you can see autonomy there as one of the attributes. So in the Fast Track Institute, in order to facilitate an incredibly distributed workforce, we have probably people in 20 or 30 countries, 200 people, all staff on demand, managed, if you will, or curated, I would say, by only 2 or 3 people in the core, highly leveraged core team. How do we do that? Well, it's exquisite definition of roles and accountabilities. This is borrowed heavily from a framework called holacracy, and it is implemented in such a fashion as something put forth by Frederick Laloux in Reinventing Organizations. These things together allow you to distribute autonomy to your workforce. And at the Fast Track Institute, I would dare say we could do nothing if we did not master this. And this one attribute is one of the most important. This has allowed us to run 5 fast tracks, pushing about 1.4 million in revenue/donations. It's a nonprofit operating in 3 cities, producing 8 companies since September of last year. So just under a year. That's crazy. All of those are edge organizations to the core. This is the power of autonomy. Now you got to put good, well-trained people in there. That's another case I think that we could dig into. You can drop the picture there. The third case is financial advisory services. I can't give you the name of this company because I didn't seek their permission before, but they implemented 2 attributes: one, staff on demand, and a second, experimentation. And I'm going to say staff on demand. We've already talked about a little bit, but these guys did it different. They said, we need staff on demand. We want fresh ideas. What are we going to do? Well, they happen to live in a city with a really good local university. So they went over, they made a deal with the university for access to students through internship type models, and they brought the computer science and data science capstone programs into their organization as staff on demand for algorithmic development around advisor matching services. They paired those students with another staff on demand person, which was a data scientist that was for hire, probably fairly high dollar in that case, but to get leverage out of that person, they train the students. And of course, they're recruiting against those students for future employees all at the same time. It's quite a nice little system that they got set up there. But the reason they did this, one of the primary reasons, was an attribute called experimentation. So the CEO says to me, he goes, Kent, we're not learning, we're not experimenting. And I want to change our culture to do that. So we're going to focus on the attribute experimentation. So that's 3 examples of implementation of EXO attributes to drive organizational scalability and become exponential organizations. It all sounds really good. There's one word of warning. There's this beast out there called the organizational immune system. It's just waiting for you. It will smash you. It will take away your teams. It will take away your budget if you're not aware of this and you don't plan for it at the beginning, really from the top down in the organization. It just doesn't like change. And the funniest thing is, and I see this over and over, it's always where you least expect it. I have a recent story of discovery of the organizational immune system in an organization that is about innovation for entire cities. So imagine that. Your biggest detractor is your biggest promoter of innovation. It makes no sense. But that is what we found. And we've been working hard to help them adjust. So with that, that's all I could do today. I just want to say thank you so much for the few minutes to share a little bit about the EXO methodology. I'm the head coach for the Gazelles Exponential Organizations course. It's out there for you if you want it. Verne, I loved what I heard from you today, and I understand better than ever how these things go together. So it's a little peanut butter and jelly there. Thanks so much.
You got it. Ken, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, I encourage everybody to take a look at the book and the online course. And so welcome back. I want to kind of end here with a quick story, and I want to open up for some more Q&A because I know they're out there. So I want everybody to go to bajabound.com. And I want to tell you a quick story about Hank. So Hank recently, about a year ago, moved to Barcelona, and that's where I got to know him and found out that he was an EO member and a big fan of our tools and the like. And he was telling me about his company, which he's had for 20 years. And I said, how did this company, first of all, free you up to be able to just come over to Barcelona for a year? And he said, look, take a look at it. First, we do one thing. And one thing that is really easy for people to get Mexican auto insurance. So if you're going to go to drive to Mexico and you're living in the United States, your car insurance isn't going to work down there. And so you're going to have to get some supplemental insurance. And if you go to the website, bajabound.com, you're going to see up in the upper right-hand corner, they say, look, we have 3 steps. Do this, print policy. And this company today has over 70% market share of this unique niche in the US. Yet it's run by a handful of employees and a dog, which you will see there on their staffing site. And again, it's given Hank the freedom to be able to break loose, manage this company from thousands of miles away, and enjoy kind of a sabbatical for a year in Barcelona. The key, focus, make it easy, and I think, to your point, Kent, autonomy, which he's provided by being in Barcelona. So with that, Megan, let me open it up to some questions.
Sure, and just some clarification. We are recording this and we'll post this on our YouTube channel so everyone can come back to view it. We've got a number of questions here, Verne, that we probably only have time for a few. So we will respond to those questions as well, letting people know. A new one that came in from Robbie is asking, he really enjoyed Scale Up. He's a career entrepreneur, and he recently got involved in a small media company with a handful of people. How do you recommend someone scale a startup?
Well, what's interesting is the fundamental habits all apply. You want to first start with the one-page kind of vision summary. You don't need something probably as complicated as a one-page strategic plan, but get clear on what are those kind of founding core values, what is the purpose, what are the 3 brand promises, and then where do you want to take this thing over the next 10 years? What is that big, hairy, audacious goal? So get agreement as a startup around those 4 ideas. And then you just get started. You're probably going to be working more on a monthly time frame than you will a quarterly because things are changing that quick. And you want to implement the daily huddle. There isn't a company in Silicon Valley, from the startups to the Googles of the world and Facebooks, who wouldn't think to drive their business without the daily huddle. The daily is at the heart of Scrum and Agile, which is how you create robust software. And so the habits apply. You can just kind of simplify them as you drive the startup.
Great, thanks, Verne. We also have a question from Zarina. She is in South America. Most of their customers are students, and they're in private higher education. What is your advice for dealing with students as customers versus students as students?
Well, I don't know. Because I think what's most important is that you see them as customers. I get a sense from the nature of the question that this person or their team are thinking second-class citizen. I don't know, but it felt like that a student is something less than a full-blown customer, and I think that would be the fatal mistake. Maybe they can clarify, because in the book I would recommend is Adele Rivera's book called Buyer Persona. And this student has a particular buyer persona, and there's going to be different buyer personas among the different students. I think one of the fatal mistakes that Bob Bloom pointed out in his early work is that we have a tendency to describe our customer in some kind of a demographic sense. Like we made the same mistake at Gazelles. We thought our clients were all companies 10 million to a billion, yet there's a subset of those that we've learned have a different set of attributes that determine whether they're going to be a really active customer of ours or not. And so I think that's what you're going to have to do, is not see them as customers or as students and as this generic group, but dig in and segment. And what you'll find in every time that you segment, we learned it from Rick Cash, the vice chairman of Nielsen, that there is always this group, no more than about 7 to 10% of all the customers, that represent an inordinate amount of your profitability. And that's what you want to identify, segment out, and pursue. And in some case, think about it, that let's risk making the other 93% not be that are. I don't know if it's helpful in terms of that question.
Great.
Megan, next.
Yep. Tom Bilmer asks, in his industry, about 85% of his business is paid by insurance companies, and they largely dictate the pricing. What advice do you have around pricing for someone in his position?
Yeah, what's interesting is a lot of companies that are in that kind of situation will augment with other side businesses or services that give them the kind of freedom and margins that allow them to move. So I'll give you an example. Steelcase dealers. It's not much different, but Steelcase pretty well dictates what is the price of the furniture out there. And you're really not in any kind of position to charge a lot more than the next Steelcase dealer or even your competition. As such, it's driven the margins down, razor thin, and ultimately the profitability. But one of our clients, who probably wants to be unnamed, I didn't get his permission either, where the average Steelcase dealer is averaging about 2.8% profitability because of this pricing and cost structure. He's somewhere up around 12% profitability. And the key is he has augmented that fundamental service of speccing, designing, and delivering this office furniture with things like furniture lifters who can come in, and every several months you actually need to lift up the furniture and move the carpet squares around so you don't wear pads down. Companies that are liquidating, he has a place where they can then warehouse the office furniture they don't need, and then he is selling that used office furniture. And then he went even one step further, and he put in place what is the last mile. It's the toughest thing in that business, which is how do you have the trucks and the people that allow you to, on time and do a great job, deliver and set up this furniture. And so he has provided a service in his community to all of not only the Steelcase dealer, but the Herman Miller and Hayworth and even office products folks and supply folks, so that he can provide that general service to the entire industry. And the margins in that, because he's really good at managing it, are huge. And so he just simply augmented the fundamental business that was pretty fixed in its price and cost structures with things that are quite high margin that fit, though, the same customer. So that would be my recommendation in that situation.
Okay, thanks. We've got time for one more question. Again, we will share the questions and your answers with the audience later, but we're going to end with the best practices question from James Webb. What are the best practices on setting up the number 2 for success and getting out of the way without becoming absent?
Yeah, you know, well, first of all, you need, if you haven't worked with them for quite a while, you need to test drive them. So bring them in and say, hey, let's work on a project together for a few months and see how that goes. And then once they're brought in, the key is this kind of 1 hour meeting. Mark Zuckerberg has it with Sheryl Sandberg every Friday. When Jeff Bellamy came in to coach University of Wisconsin under the great, I just went blank on the guy who was the famous coach there. They met every Thursday. They'd go on a walk and talk for an hour. What you need to do is set up this routine of an hour or so each week where you sit down and say, all right, what's working, what's not working? Let me pass on to you kind of my experience so that we can have this mind meld. And it normally takes 6 to 12 months for that to happen. And that's what will work best.
Okay, great. Thanks, Verne. I think that's it for our questions. Again, this will be recorded and we'll be able to answer any outstanding questions. You want to close the program?
Yeah, no, I just want everybody to go back and just get obsessed around this word easy. What do you have to do for customers and your employees? And then I want you to dig into price and raise your game there. It's not about high or low. It's about getting it right and getting it variable and using price as a strategic weapon inside the organization. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.